Alrighty. I found another picture in our classroom, so we're gonna be by the comfy chairs. We're all gonna fit there today. Little Erec Rex for those of you that want to hear it. Yes, I'm sporting one of my favorite hats again today. It's actually cold outside today. Hopefully it's warmer tomorrow. This is going to start on page 236. So if you're not caught up to page 236 yet, please do that with one of the other videos that gets you there. YouTube channel is always the place where I'll keep the Erec Rex videos. So page 236, a hole in the substance. Okay, this angle's a little bit funny. All right, there we go. I don't know if that helped. All right, a hole in the substance. Eric and Jam waited a few hours so the trolls would be in a deep sleep. Then they each stuffed some of the Kolya leaves in their mouths. The leaves tasted like thick, hairy caterpillars, that squished slime onto his tongue when he chewed them. He managed to swallow, and moments later, he lifted slightly off the ground, as if he weighed almost nothing. Jam and Eric jumped and floated easily up before drifting down again, like they were on the moon. Eric was not sure if this would help them rescue the dragons, but it sure was fun leaping up, catching tree branches, and drifting gently back to the ground when he let go. Aquas lay still on the ground. Eric and Jam snuck to the edge of the grassy cave. There was a small crevice on one side where the boulder didn't quite cover the entrance. It would be night, but they could squeeze through it. The only problem would be getting the dragon hatchlings out through it, or getting themselves out fast enough if there was danger. Are you ready, sir? Jem asked. Eric nodded. Let's do it. He squeezed through first, glad he was wearing his magical sneakers so he didn't have to worry about making noise. After he made it through the crack, he skidded down a steep tunnel, barely landing on his sneakers. He remembered Aquas had said that trolls were light sleepers. Jam tumbled in after him. Eric held his arms out to catch him, but Jam bounced off of him and onto the floor. The Kolya leaves let him drift down silently. It was dark in the cave, but a chorus of loud snores echoed in Eric's ears. He held still until his eyes adjusted, then walked silently in his sneakers toward the sound. Jam stayed where he was to keep from making noise. Around the corner, a very dim light showed the mass of sleeping dragons who were now on the trolls' schedule. The two trolls were asleep, their many heads gurgling and snoring. One of the heads was drooling heavily onto another one's eyes, causing it to wipe itself off in its sleep. Eric looked around the room to see if there was anything that could possibly help him. Other than a small pile of gold and that the trolls must have brought here for comfort, there was nothing else in the room. Nothing but his wits, which seemed sadly lacking at the moment. Even though he could step quietly because of his sneakers, he could not imagine getting the dragons out without the trolls noticing, especially through the small crack at the edge of the boulder. The dream herb he had managed to gag down did not seem like it would help either. If only he could have a cloudy thought right now. But then Eric remembered that his last cloudy thought had been what it had been. It wasn't reassuring. He remembered the feeling of doing nothing, staring into nothingness, his energy eking out of him. He pushed that thought out of his mind. There had to be something he could do. He noticed the flask that was still attached to the three-headed troll's belt. It would give him enough strength, but how would that help? If he picked up the dragons in one scoop, he would still wake up the trolls. Would it give him enough to overpower them? Well, he would not know until he tried it. With long, slow steps, he crossed the cave floor and ducked next to the three-headed troll. The flask was within reach, if he could only unhitch it without waking the troll. He leaned closer and saw that it was in a holster. When he put his hand on it, though, two of the troll's heads grunted and the troll rolled over, plopping a thick arm over Eric's shoulders. Eric was pinned to the ground. Well, this was great. Now he would be the troll's teddy bear until evening, when the trolls woke up, at which time he would become Troll's breakfast. What if Aquas had seen the future wrong? He pushed as hard as he could, but the arm was like a lead weight. He could not even slide to the side. At least it wasn't lower on the chest, or he would have suffocated. The flask on the troll's belt was now almost under the troll, but Eric could still see it. He strained, reaching as far as he could, until he felt the cool glass. His fingertips touched it, but he could not get it out. He sighed, if only he could do magic. Then he could get the flask, overcome the trolls, and stop the monsters in otherness. No problem. Eric's breath stopped. Magic. He had done some magic. There was no reason he couldn't do it again. He slipped the remote control out of his pocket. Let's see, how did it work? He remembered pushing the large button, saying something that would make things move, but how far would it move? And which way? He had not practiced at all. He lay for a few moments in silence, trying to remember what word would make things move with his remote. A soft crunch resounded in the distance. Jam's footsteps. No, he thought. Don't come over here now. There's nothing you can do. You will just wake up the trolls. There was another soft crunch, and the troll squirmed, gripping Eric tighter. It was obvious he had heard the noise in his sleep. There wasn't much time before Jam woke them up. Eric had to act fast. If only he could remember that word. But even if he remembered it, what should he do? Moving the troll's arm with a spell seemed out of the question. Whether it shot off of Eric or floated up high, it surely would wake him, and Eric would be history. No, the only possibility was to try to move the flask closer so he could reach it. The remote control felt slippery in his hand. It was brand new. He'd only used Roscoe's before, and he had absolutely no idea how well this one worked. Eric tried to point it at the flask, but he was not sure if he was also pointing it at the troll's hip. That would be the last thing he wanted to move. There was another crunch, this time slightly louder as Jam grew nearer. Eric was grateful. He was trying to help, but Jam had no idea what danger he was putting Eric in. What was the word? It was on the tip of Eric's tongue. Then he remembered. He pushed the button. "Pharaoh," he whispered. The flask lurched from the troll's holster, yanking his belt along with it. "What?" Two of the troll's heads woke up and looked around in shock. Before another moment went by, Eric pulled open the flask and tipped it into his mouth. The fluid in it was green, and it tasted greener still, like lichen from the forest floor. Eric felt no different at all, but he now easily lifted the troll's arm off of him. The tonic in the flask had definitely had an effect. All three heads of the troll were now awake and looking around, stunned. In a moment, 6 eyes settled on Eric, followed by 4 more from the other troll. "What's this? We have a visitor!" The 3-headed troll was rubbing his hands together eagerly. "Nothing like a nighttime snack, I always says," the bald-headed laughed. "Save some for me," the bodiless head complained. "You never save any for me." Jam looked stunned. "Please take me. Let this young sir go. He's too small for you anyway." The green-haired head looked at Jam, laughing. "Okay, we'll let him go. Until after we finish you off. He'll make a good dessert." Eric picked up the 3-headed troll, holding its wrists behind its back. Jam looked at him in amazement, unaware he had drunk from the troll's flask. The trolls also seemed stunned. "Well, now there's no reason for this," the hairy head said. "Set us down and we'll talk man to man, seeing as how you've got a little more in you than most other." Yeah, Eric thought. Like your spinacia plasma that he drank? Eric set the troll down and tried to look menacing. "Don't look at us like that," said the bodiless head. "We can still overpower you if we want. First, we just want to know who you are and why you're here." Looking at them, it did seem that they could overpower him if they worked together. Maybe if he fought them both at the same time, Jam could sneak the baby dragons out. But then again, if the trolls were getting a hunk of gold to guard the dragons, they weren't likely to let them go, and Jam would certainly be crushed in any fight. There had to be a better way. Eric fought the urge to blurt out the answer to the troll's question. The scroll in his pocket made him tell the truth, but if he thought hard enough, he could choose which truth to tell. Could he trick them somehow? "I have something that you would want. We can make a trade for the dragons." All of the heads began laughing at once. "That's a good one. Ooh-wee!" The troll slapped its side. "And what, pray tell, is this fine treasure you carry that we'll end up with anyway before the day is through?" Eric pulled the archives of Alithia out from his pocket. "This is a magic scroll that makes you tell the truth when you hold it. Would you like to see it?" After some growling and fighting over which troll got to hold it first, the white-haired one took it, setting its other head on the ground. "Doesn't look too exciting to me." "Just try it," Eric said. "Try to lie." The troll muttered, stumbling on his own words. "I can't, but I don't really know what to say." "Maybe this will help," said Eric. "Who's paying you to guard those dragons?" "Why?" this troll muttered. "The Shadow Prince. He's harvesting their eyes." The troll looked around in shock. "I can't believe I told you that. Here, try it." He handed the scroll to the 3-headed troll. Eric looked at him. "What will it take for you to give me the dragons?" The troll that held the scroll answered, "There's nothing you can do to get them. The Shadow Prince is too powerful. If we break our promise to him, that will be the end of us." Oh, he laughed. But don't you worry. We'll take this treasure anyway after we eat you for breakfast. Jam clucked his tongue, shaking his head with a sad look. If you did, that would be a shame for you, kind sirs. I have something much better to give you, more riches than you've ever seen before. Surely you would like to see that before you eat us, or I won't be able to give it to you. The trolls looked at Jam with new interest. What treasure? The hairy head asked. This gets even better. Jam looked at Eric, an eyebrow raised. Yes, outside is the most tremendous treasure yet ever. You just have to step outside to see it. But you need to do it now. The trolls were laughing and sneering at once. That's the oldest trick in the book. You want us to step outside into the light of day, make us turn to stone. We're not stupid. Jam shrugged. Oh, daytime's over, kind sirs. You're awake, right? Do you not believe me? Watch, I'll hold the scroll, and then you'll know I'm telling the truth. Eric held his breath, afraid of what would happen next. Jam picked up the archives of Alithia. Before he spoke, he closed his eyes in concentration, making sure he didn't spout out more than necessary. Outside is the biggest ball of gold you will ever see. It is the greatest treasure we have on earth. If you wait, it will be too late, and it will be gone from view. He put the archives of Alithia down. You better hurry if you want the treasure. I couldn't lie to you when I was holding the scroll now, could I? The trolls foamed at the mouth, overcome with greed. One of the heads shouted, He said it's night now. He couldn't have lied about that with the scroll. Another nodded. Yeah, let's go. The trolls raced to the cave entrance, leaving the unattached head behind, and threw the boulder out of the way without hesitation. Warm rays of sunlight shone down on the trolls' faces. They quickly turned to stone. Eric looked at Jam in wonder. How were you able to lie when you were holding the scroll? I didn't, Jam winked. The biggest ball of gold was outside, our greatest treasure, the sun. Jam and Eric led the chained dragons outside into the light. Jam was looking much better now that his hair wax had worn off. The dream herb helped them bounce easily up the tunnel with armloads of the hatchlings. They were still chained together, so some dangled in the air as others were scooped up. But they got out quickly. The little things looked around, blinking, unused to the sun. Aquas was waiting nearby. Good job, Eric. I'm glad to see things have gone as expected. Eric studied the dragons. You won't be able to carry them back, will you? There was no way they could fit on Aqua's back, even if he was strong enough. There is another way. In the distance, the faint sound of trumpets and snare drums rose over the hills. It grew louder, enough for Eric to recognize the music. It was the same tune he had heard the marching band playing in Alpium the day he was chased by the mobs of angry villagers. He remembered the parade had been led by tiny General Moorhead and wondered if he was in Otherness now. Eric looked down at the dragons. How was he going to get them to safety? Back to their homes far away in another part of Otherness. Biscania was supposed to be directing the army marching into Lerna for the Monster Bash. If he was nearby, how could Eric get the dragons by without him noticing? If only he could safely hide them somewhere until the Monster Bash was over. He and Aquas could find their parents, then somehow sneak them back home. He wondered if there was anybody he could trust to hide the dragon hatchlings. Probably not. Certainly the Alpiums had bad views of the dragons. He remembered Miss Anai's lecture and the dragon effigies in the parade. Miss Anai, Eric closed his eyes. He had forgotten. She had told him that if he missed another one of her classes, he would be kicked out of the quests, sent back home. Not that he had the choice of staying in Alpium anyway, but he wondered if he would be allowed to do the second quest, to stop the monsters in Lerna. Well, even if it didn't count for anything, he would still do his best to save Tina's family. And he had Aquas to help him, so he really had a chance. If only there was a place to hide the dragons. Biscania would be here soon after the Monster Bash, and he would not let them go easily. He would uproot every shrub in Otherness to search for his prizes. Where could they go where there would be no trace? Not anywhere in this world. Then Eric realized what he needed to do. The dragons had to hide in the Nevervault, the place behind the substance, the place of no magic at all. Most humans could not survive there, but he remembered that dragons could last there for days, and the Nevervault, with its complete lack of magic, of substance, would be one place where Biscania would have no power. There was a hole in the Nevervault in Nemea, but without Nitroshiren to help him, he would never find it again. He tried to remember what he had heard about the hole, think if there was a way to find it again. The woman in the magic net had told him it was made by the searing power of a dragon's eyes. He looked at Aquas. can you make a hole in the substance?
Yes, with your help. You are thinking of hiding them in the Neverwald, and it does seem the only option now. We would never get these hatchlings home before Biscania began a search for them, and it would take too long to find their parents now. Someone else might find them first.
Are you sure they can live in there?
Only a few days at best. Beyond that, I do not know. They will eat the lion-skin flowers. After I help you, you must come back for them as soon as Biscania is gone. If you lead them into Nemea and the wilds near there, where my cave is, their parents will see you are bringing them to safety. I am afraid that if you go to the parents first, they might roast you before they hear what you had to say. We've become pretty skeptical of humans. But don't you help...
Oh, sorry, this is Erec now. But won't you help me find their parents? Aqua snorted. Erec remembered that the substance in the aether planes looked like what it looked like through a dragon's eye. Aquis, can you see the substance all the time?
Yes, it's a perk of being a dragon. Along with some others, you may discover some day having one of my eyes. Well, I've been saving my energy. Opening a hole in the substance is not an easy task.
Well, how do you do it? Jam asked.
I see it. I see deeply into it until I can cut it with my sight.
Erec frowned. Well, why do you need me to help you?
Because you have my other eye, said Aquis.
Eric's mouth dropped. So he would have to cut through the aether planes with his eye? It seemed impossible. He could barely control it, let alone use it for a purpose like that. Well, how do I... Steam gushed from Aqua's nose.
I will show you. Are you ready?
Erec nodded, not sure he felt ready for anything.
It's best we do this now. Jam, do you have a pen?
Jam produced a pen from his pocket.
Good. Now mark one of the petals on that small daisy there.
Jam dotted a spot on the flower. Aquis motioned to Erec.
Sit next to me. We will both stare at the spot that Jam drew. Concentrate. Bring your dragon eye forward and look through it. See the substance.
Wait a minute, Erec said. I can't just bring the dragon eye out. It does it by itself sometimes. I don't know how to work it.
Well, it's time you learned. He took a breath. Dragons are pure, Erec. We are creatures of the air, true to our natures and our hearts. In order to work your dragon eye, you need to think like a dragon. You need to pull from yourself the most pure emotion you have, love. That is what dragons are, creatures of love. You may not understand seeing us shredding our prey, killing those who cross us, but we need to eat and protect ourselves. Inside, we are very close to the aether planes and the magic in them. And that is love too. That is why Thanatos Argus Biscania will never get the full use out of any dragon eyes that he has. He could use them all right, but only from the other side, the way that is much more limited in its power. He would use them with hate. And the future, it would show him, would be warped, and he would destroy the future. Because it is not only important that we save these hatchlings so that they can live, it is also vital, maybe even more so, that Biscania not get 100 dragon eyes to add to his power. He would see things he could never understand, change the future without pause, and that would destroy all of existence.
Chills ran down Eric's neck. He had not known what was at stake. Well, tell me how to make the hole, Aquis.
First, you must bring out my other eye. Use your love, Erec. Focus not on people or things that you love, but on the love that is in you. What you have within, your pure emotion, focus.
Erec did focus. He closed his eyes and sensed deep inside of him all the love he had in his life. Images of people and things shot through his head, but he dug deeper and thought about what was underneath. And that was himself. He felt good, in touch with the earth and all that was in it. He was at peace. He opened his eyes, and everything was green. Big wads of white netting shone in the air. This time, Erec felt connected with them, and the magic that lay within them.
Very good.
Aqua's voice rung clear.
Now, let us both focus on the dot that Jam drew on the flower petal. We will look into it with our eyes and see, really see. Every thread of substance that is in that spot will show itself to us as we concentrate. And it becomes fully clear, and we see it for what it really is. We speak to it, move it, change the substance in this small spot of the world.
Sounded like no small task, but Aqua's voice sounded sure, and Erec felt confident. He looked at the spot that Jam had drawn. It was a small black mark on a tiny white petal, but it was clear. Erec looked harder. The netting of the substance hung around it, but did not seem to lie in that tiny spot. It had to be there. He was sure. He squinted, looking harder. What had Aqua said? To really see it? But how? Where was it? Love. He could hear Aqua's voice in the back of his mind. And that was all it took. The love he felt poured out into the spot. What appeared before his eyes was amazing. It was an unveiling, a giving of something to him, a showing of secrets, an opening. For he could see now the layers that existed in every plane that was there, and they were beautiful. He went closer, not in body, but in his mind. As he approached them, they grew for him and split into all their parts, each more fascinating than the next. So this was magic. This was how it worked. It was a lifehood of the universe. Eric had no idea how long he had been exploring the substance, or what Aquas might have been doing. But the further he got into its depths, the closer to an end, the more layers separated out into more parts until it became obvious. It was infinite, and it was love. The realization sprung upon him, changing him somehow. For now he could not only see the gorgeous patterns, but he could feel them, understand them. It was time to ask them to change for him, for the dragons, and for the sake of the world. Without averting his eyes, Eric asked with every ounce of his heart, and the substance said yes. He pushed into it with his vision, moving things, changing them. He separated out the small webs and the smaller ones, aware that someone else was working alongside him, helping him carve the path. A hole was appearing. He could see it now, and he had to make it grow, make it big enough. And even though the substance was letting him, it was hard, because the hole was emptiness, nothingness, a gap in what was important, and it scared him. But he could not let his fear stop him. He had to push forward. The nothingness grew around him, sucking the self out of him like a vortex. He pushed further, giving every bit of himself to make the change. But he did not know anymore if the change was inside or outside of himself. Every bit of energy was sucked out of him, burned up in the fire of making and unmaking. He felt fainter, lighter, like he was disappearing altogether. Then finally, blackness took over completely. And that, my friends, brings us to the next chapter, chapter 19, which is on page 250. So I will stop there. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful night. Please pick up our little area here in our room. Somebody get the lights. That'd be great. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.